Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about the real reason every good idea in this family seems to fall apart the moment Kody walks through the door. By now, Kody Brown's decision-making style is almost predictable. It's like a weather vane on a windy day, pointing confidently in one direction until an unseen gust sends it spinning the other way. We've watched this cycle play out so many times that it might as well be part of the show's official formula. A big idea appears, Kody is all in, he disappears for a while, and then he comes back with a long list of reasons why it suddenly won't work. Janelle has described this pattern with tired accuracy. She talks about how excitement quickly burns down into a pile of second thoughts, every single time. And there's one detail that keeps showing up, whether the show wants us to notice it or not. Kody's reversals almost always line up with the opinions of one particular wife. In one confessional, Robyn casually remarks, almost playfully, that the others tend to make decisions without checking with the whole group. It's said like a joke, but the timing feels a little too perfect to ignore. Over the years, we've seen the same routine again and again. Kody supports an idea when he's alone with the wife who suggested it. Then, he vanishes. And when he comes back, he's suddenly repeating a completely different opinion, one that just happens to match Robyn's view. Take Meri's bed and breakfast. When Kody visited in person, he was upbeat and encouraging. But once he returned home, that support was gone, replaced by objections that didn't sound like his own. Or, look at Christine's dream of moving back to Utah. In private, Kody practically applauded the idea. In front of the group, he reversed course and presented it like a dangerous proposal that needed to be shut down. And then, there's the Flagstaff land saga. Cottonwood had momentum. Meri liked it. Janelle was ready to write a check. Even Kody seemed genuinely excited. But the moment Robyn showed disinterest, Cottonwood disappeared entirely. Suddenly, Coyote Pass became the only acceptable option. No questions allowed. The pattern isn't subtle anymore. As Robyn's status in the family became more official, her influence over Kody's decisions became harder to miss. What once felt like quiet persuasion now happens right out in the open, often reinforced by carefully worded confessionals. This season just pulls the curtain back a bit further. Christine and Janelle speak more freely, and the editing finally encourages viewers to connect dots that have been scattered across years of footage. For once, reality TV isn't hiding the power dynamics, it's spotlighting them. And that brings us to Robyn's so-called moral awakening. One short scene of her encouraging Kody to call his children has convinced some viewers she's changed completely. It's a touching moment, sure, but let's be honest. This doesn't look like a transformation. It looks like a strategy. After nearly 20 years of watching this family slowly fall apart on camera, it's surprising how quickly some viewers are ready to crown a hero, simply because a few tears were shed at the right moment. There's a growing push to redeem Robyn, as if one emotional scene wipes away years of history. But that version of events doesn't hold up very well. From the very beginning, Robyn was not a helpless newcomer dropped into an already broken situation. She was an active participant and often a driving force. Even during the courtship, before she officially joined the family, secrecy became part of the relationship. It was treated almost like a romantic game. Season 1 gave us a clear example, the infamous wedding dress incident. That wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. It was carefully constructed drama built on deception, followed by Robyn's frustration that Kody hadn't guarded her secret more fiercely. Respect for the existing wives, the children, and the family's rules simply wasn't there from day one. Robyn didn't just benefit from Kody's favoritism, she encouraged it. Yes, Kody deserves the largest share of responsibility. He made the choices. But pretending Robyn had no role ignores how she reinforced his worst instincts and gained from them. The argument that Kody is an adult man only seems to appear when it's used to shield her. In every other situation, he's portrayed as easily influenced, emotionally fragile, or misled by belief systems. If adult men truly can't be influenced, then nearly 18 seasons of this show make no sense at all. Even within the family, Robyn has long been described as destabilizing. Several of the children have said her presence played a major role in the breakdown of their relationships. Janelle learned early to be careful with her words, knowing that even a harmless comment could be relayed back to Kody in a far more explosive form. Problems that were supposedly resolved had a way of resurfacing months later, always filtered through Robyn's version of events. When these patterns were finally acknowledged on screen, many viewers felt a sense of clarity. But now, after a carefully framed conversation where Robyn expresses disappointment in Kody's parenting, the narrative has suddenly flipped. The contradiction is hard to ignore. She urges reconciliation, yet labels those same children as unsafe influences on her own. Sibling relationships are discouraged. Shared holidays are too risky. Even something as simple as a gift exchange becomes a battleground. And yet, she speaks earnestly about family unity. The routine is familiar. Say the right things, act in the opposite way, and hope no one connects the dots. The show's timeline only makes this more obvious. Her complaints are consistently framed to present her as a perpetual victim, wounded by past trauma, always misunderstood, forever defending herself. But the long record tells a different story. Whether intentional or not, she has repeatedly functioned as a wedge, and she continues to choose that position. Claiming she merely married into chaos overlooks her role in deepening it. Even her own history, particularly decisions involving her children's father, echoes the same abandonment narrative she now uses as justification. The latest episode doesn't change the pattern. The children feel silenced, knowing that honesty will likely be twisted or amplified. Kody admits he's still protecting Robyn from perceived threats, highlighting the imbalance that has defined this family for years. And yet, viewers are being asked to accept that one carefully staged moment equals real accountability, to forget the secrecy, the tears, the curated victimhood, the broken relationships, and the consistent testimonies from the original family members themselves. One emotional scene does not equal a redemption story. It never has. What we're seeing now looks far more like an attempt to reshape public opinion, and it's not especially subtle. Robyn has always been very good at saying the right sentence after the fact, the kind that sounds thoughtful and self-aware. But when words aren't followed by meaningful action, they're not honesty, they're performance. And trying to rewrite the narrative after so much visible damage only highlights how little has truly changed. Viewers aren't naive. They've been watching closely for years. Christine's departure is what finally exposed the fractures the Brown family spent a decade pretending didn't exist. Her exit is often described as the first domino to fall, as if it were simply the natural outcome of a weakening structure. What gets overlooked is what it meant to be first in this family. Being first meant walking away with no roadmap, no example to follow, and no guarantee of safety, emotional or relational. It took a level of courage that others later benefited from, but never had to summon in the same way. Leaving Kody wasn't a neat, paperwork-only decision for Christine. It was a leap into the unknown. She had to face the possibility that the family would remain intact, just without her, and that her children might be pulled away with it. Later departures could take comfort in knowing the kids would stay connected. Christine didn't have that reassurance. For all she knew, Kody could have worked tirelessly to isolate Truly and Isabel from the rest of the family. That risk was very real, and she accepted it anyway. Before she could even walk out the door, Christine was required to endure the ritual. She had to defend herself in front of the group, pick apart her own marriage, and absorb Kody's fury as he accused her of betrayal, of abandoning the family, and of destroying their so-called unity. Then came the religious dramatics, solemn questions about spiritual rules, delivered by people who rarely attended church, but suddenly cared deeply about protocol. Convenient timing. As always, Christine carried all of this alone. The others who left later walked the path she cleared. And when Meri eventually exited, there was no real acknowledgement of who made that escape possible. No reflection on how dismissive she had once been, or how visibly she distanced herself from Christine's pain. A brief apology on a tell-all might have checked a box, but it didn't undo years of indifference. And to be fair, people are allowed to grow apart. No one is obligated to maintain relationships that ended long before the paperwork did. Still, the weight of Christine's decision becomes clearer when you look at how prepared she was. She didn't leave on impulse. She did the work, therapy, financial planning, and emotional preparation for the intimidation tactics she knew were coming. When Kody erupted, she handled it with the calm of someone who had already mentally moved forward. Even so, the emotional burden was heavy. Christine once shared that she spoke to some of Janelle's children before leaving, asking what would happen if she walked away. Maddie's reassurance that Christine would always be a grandmother to her children offered a grounding truth that many of the adults failed to provide. By the pandemic years, the younger generation already knew which relationships were real and which were just for show. When Kody chose distance, Janelle and Christine chose family. Christine's fear was never abstract or imagined. It was deeply personal. She grew up watching her own mother leave a plural marriage, only to be shunned by the community, and for a time, even by her own children. That experience stayed with Christine. It followed her into adulthood and hovered over her decision to leave. She had every reason to wonder whether history would repeat itself. Would her own children turn away? Would Janelle's kids? Would Leon? After all, Christine herself once distanced from her mother under similar circumstances. That kind of doubt doesn't fade easily. So yes, others eventually chose to leave too, and each of them faced their own emotional challenges. But it was Christine who stepped into the storm first. She took the hit without knowing how it would end, and she walked away anyway. That kind of courage shouldn't be minimized or watered down, just because the path looked clearer for those who followed. Now, let's talk about something else that deserves a little honesty. Tayeta Farms. It's being introduced with all the excitement of a bold new chapter, but if we're being realistic, its long-term prospects look uncomfortably similar to many past Brown family ventures that never fully came to life. The project is driven by Janelle and Meri, both capable, motivated people, but also people with a long history of starting strong and finishing. Well, not so much. Janelle's life has often been marked by fresh starts that quietly stall out. New plans, new moves, boxes never fully unpacked. The symbolism almost writes itself. Meri, on the other hand, left college quickly to marry Caleb, setting aside any clear career path before it had time to form. With a growing family and young children needing constant attention, it's fair to say this farm won't be her top priority. And then there's the reality of farming itself. Right now, the farm exists more as an idea than a functioning operation. The land still needs to be cleared before anyone can even begin designing it. Farming isn't a romantic walk through flower fields. It takes knowledge, hard physical work, expensive equipment, irrigation systems, and the ability to sell perishable goods on tight deadlines. Add in recent hurricane damage in North Carolina, and the timeline stretches even further. Even the most hopeful observers admit this kind of project needs far more hands than two beginners with good intentions. The optimistic view is that Janelle's independence might finally change the outcome. Major personal upheaval can sharpen focus, and being free from Kody's chaos might allow her to pursue goals without constant disruption. There's also the lingering belief, maybe even a kind fiction, that many of her past financial choices were shaped by living in a household where money was treated casually at best. Without that pressure, perhaps better decisions will follow. Of course, there's also the less hopeful possibility Another well-intentioned project, joining the collection of unfinished Brown family business ideas right alongside my sister wife's closet. A reminder of what happens when excitement replaces planning. Still, stepping outside the world of multi-level marketing is progress in itself. Whether Taeda Farms becomes a thriving business or an expensive hobby, at least the goal points in a healthier direction. If Janelle wants a greenhouse operation, a flower business, or simply a fresh start, that's fair. But it needs to be built on real strategy, not wishful thinking. And if history teaches us anything, bringing in experienced professionals might be the smartest move this venture could make. And here's the truth the show never wanted you to see clearly. The biggest lies weren't told to the audience. They were told to each other. At its core, the Brown family story is surprisingly simple. Everyone was lying, and they did it for so long and with such determination that you almost have to admire the endurance. For years, the show presented a carefully polished image of a peaceful, cooperative, plural family, almost like a documentary record of how things truly worked. But the irony is hard to miss. The most consistently honest voices have been the children. And when they tried to speak openly, those efforts were often met with what looked like enthusiasm for gag orders, and even talk of non-disclosure agreements. Nothing says authentic family story quite like trying to legally silence your own kids. Every adult in this family has, at one time or another, contradicted what they previously said on camera. These aren't small inconsistencies. They're bold rewrites of history, the kind that suggest the cast wasn't just performing for viewers, but also for themselves. Christine has even admitted that the tightly controlled version of herself we saw early on wasn't exactly fake. It was the result of living inside a closed system where questioning the narrative wasn't encouraged. Once people stepped outside that bubble, most of them changed for the better. The exception, unsurprisingly, is the couple still clinging tightly to the old mythology. Not all of the deception was cruel or calculated. A lot of it looks like self-deception. There was a genuine belief that if they repeated the glossy story often enough, it might become true. And when cameras are rolling, and contracts and paychecks are involved, people tend to present their lives the way they wish they were, not the way they actually are. The space between what they felt, what they hoped, and what they were willing to admit created a performance that eventually collapsed under its own weight. Ironically, that shiny family myth is what drew viewers in to begin with. People tuned in to learn about a different lifestyle and stayed to watch it slowly unravel. The wives and children peeling away from a broken system and a patriarch whose leadership style aged about as well as milk left on the counter. Over time, separating truth from fiction became part of the entertainment itself, even as the real answers grew harder to pin down. So yes, they lied. They lied to the audience, to each other, and often to themselves. And while we'll probably never get a neat, fully honest wrap-up episode, the ongoing effort to piece together what actually happened has become the show's most dependable storyline. Now, let's talk about the spiritual release and why it truly rattled Kody. What scared him wasn't religion. It was the word abandonment. Season 19 shows Kody reaching new levels of theatrical confusion, interrogating a breakup he spent years demanding. After repeatedly announcing, on camera, that he regretted marrying Meri, he suddenly seems baffled by her decision to seek a spiritual release. It's like watching someone build a coffin, nail it shut, label it clearly, and then ask why the person inside decided to leave. This behavior fits his long-standing pattern. Punishment has always been one of his favorite tools. Anyone he believes has crossed him is met with coldness, blame, and frequent reminders that he never should have married them at all. But punishment only works if there's an audience. Meri's growing indifference robs him of the reaction he wants. And nothing frustrates him more than losing the ability to hurt someone on camera. Even his anger toward the church elders follows the same logic. Their decision to grant Meri a spiritual release based on abandonment threatens the image he's worked so hard to maintain. Being officially labeled an abandoner doesn't fit the story of the misunderstood, long-suffering patriarch. And if that label sticks, even Robyn may struggle to keep the heroic version of the narrative alive. The network's continued platforming of all this only makes the whole spectacle feel more absurd. If TLC is determined to keep its franchise centered on Kody's self-made chaos, a far more interesting move would be to let Meri, Janelle, and Christine tell their stories somewhere else. Hand the Post Sister Wives chapter to another network, and let TLC hold on to whatever remains of its flagship couple's carefully staged, Stepford-style storyline. At this point, it's clear Kody isn't searching for closure. He's looking for a fight. For years, he fed off emotional sparring with Meri, using conflict as fuel before retreating to the comfort of his preferred partner. Now that Meri has stepped out of the ring, he's trying to pull her back in, throwing out tangled word salads and circular accusations, hoping to revive a dynamic she's no longer interested in playing. The problem is simple. You can't argue with someone who's already moved on. And that brings us to an uncomfortable truth about Robyn's response to Kody's big apology idea. She would actually prefer the past stay broken. Her reaction to the concept of an apology tour had all the enthusiasm of someone being asked to host a fundraiser for their ex's new relationship. Her tone, half warning, half disclaimer, made it clear she doesn't expect Kody to follow through. And she doesn't especially want him to. In her world, apologies seem to be optional, and ideally someone else's responsibility. This is the same person who recently claimed, with carefully timed sadness, that she treasures the larger family. Yet, when Kody suddenly feels inspired to make amends, there's no encouragement from Robyn at all. His motivation looks less like a moral awakening and more like an attempt to repair his image with the children of Meri, Janelle, and Christine, plus the convenient bonus of usable footage. Even that lukewarm effort earns no support from Robyn, who has shown little interest in sharing him with the people he now claims he wants to reconnect with. Whether genuine remorse plays any role here is still an open question. What isn't in doubt is that the cameras are rolling. The scene was filmed, shaped, and approved. And still, Robyn couldn't hide her irritation. Her facial expressions alone tell a story that directly contradicts the words being spoken. Meanwhile, Kody appears completely unaware that what he's calling an apology is really just cosmetic maintenance for his ego, not a meaningful attempt to repair real harm. Together, they form a partnership that's strangely perfect in its imbalance. Two people who reliably bring out the worst in each other. Robyn's underlying fear seems almost visible. If Kody spends too much time around the women who left, he might realize just how bleak and suffocating life at home has become. Her constant frown, less a passing mood and more a default setting, only reinforces that atmosphere. Subscribe.